When you think of Oregon wine country, you probably think first of Portland and then of the Willamette Valley nearby. If you dive a little deeper, perhaps the Applegate and the Rogue River valleys come on your radar from the far southern end of the state. Often overlooked is the Umpqua Valley that lies between these two regions. Around the city of Roseburg, off the I-5, you'll find a couple dozen wineries, and it's here that you'll find Girardet. Girardet was one of the first wineries in the region, planting their vineyard in the town of Tenmile in 1971. Their story is one I love because it begins with a trip in a 1965 VW bus. After moving to Oregon, when Philippe Girardet got bored as a rocket scientist with Caltech, he and his wife Bonnie decided to plant a vineyard. They needed vines, so they took the VW bus and drove to the Livermore Valley, and then they did a cross-country drive to New York, where they picked up some of the French-American hybrid vines. Having never visited this region and really being interested in these hybrid vines, Michael and I set out to visit the winery last July as we were traveling north to Washington. Mark Girardet, Philippe's son and second-generation winemaker, was kind enough to take some time and talk with us. We sat at the picnic table under the vine-laden pergola next to the tasting room. It's got a great view.
Tenmile, yeah, it's like we've got one little gas station and houses and a winery, and that's Tenmile.
I know that you have started to change over to sustainable. Mm-hmm. Where are you at with that, and what direction do you think you're going in with it?
Right. So, yeah, and that's something that's been really dear to me as a second-generation winemaker. Because I've had that perspective of I grew up on the vineyard here, and so watching my parents farm, and then eventually taking over the farm myself. So I'm starting to think about okay, I have a 7-year-old daughter, and maybe someday she gets involved in it. So as you start to look at that longer time frame of multiple generations living on the same land, you start to think about, okay, I really don't want to do anything that's going to mess this up, pollute the soil or anything like that would mean that the next generations couldn't have the same opportunities that I've had or that my parents had. And so I really started looking at, okay, soil health and, what can we do to make sure all of our inputs are as natural as possible, and really just that long-term health of the vineyard, the soil, and then the wines that we can make from that. Mm-hmm. So I started using this locally available horse manure compost that I found, and noticed that really helps the soil, the vines, and the bacteria that we get in the dirt, and it maintains the vine health, especially through the summer seasons. And without using any irrigation here, we really have to look at soil health for our vines to still produce a grape.
Right.
And through the long dry summers, we're looking at, okay, the grapes are going to be a little smaller without any of that irrigation water, but if our soil's healthy, we're actually going to get a really amazing grape. So with the compost, we've seen a lot of benefits, and so I'm supplementing that with some like liquid fish fertilizer, things that are as much sourced from nature as possible. And so that's getting me down this path towards the biodynamic style of farming. And I haven't fully decided if I'm on board or going to get on board with some of the more mystical aspects of that farming, with the bullhorns and the sort of ceremonial aspects during the equinox and things like that, which I do admire that. I'm just not sure if I'm going to go that route.
Yeah.
But I'm a firm believer in anything I can demonstrate scientifically. So I've also, years ago, I decided, okay, so I do all my own vineyard spraying, and we have a lot of animals that live on the property in addition to, children. And so, I don't want to spray anything that could hurt somebody, a creature or a person. And so for many years, I've only been spraying the sulfur and the oil. So these are things that are, considered organic. They're not going to hurt anybody. And that way I know there's no residue on the grapes either that could affect the wine. So, and it means I have to drive my tractor more often because the natural sprays do not have the life span between spray intervals. But I don't view that as a bad thing because I love driving tractors. I every 7 to 10 days I'm out there spraying a little more sulfur on the vines and just keeping them clean.
There you go.
So, and then as far as the herbicides, we used to use those in the past, but I've also switched away from those. So basically now I'm the number one customer in town for the string trimmer line. So we manually use the string trimmers on the weeds, and so it's very laborious.
Right.
But that way we know that we have a safer environment.
Hi there.
And this is Mo, the vineyard cat.
Hi, Mo.
So she's a happy cat.
Oh, she's sweet.
Prowls the vines and part of the rodent control.
Excellent.
So we have a few cats that live on the property, and they're very happy. We have the chickens. So we have a flock of chickens and ducks, and they've actually, not only are those a source of eggs, but that's allowed us to get away with never having to spray an insecticide because they eat all the bugs. I should say they eat all the bad bugs. We do have, and this is amazing to me, I'm always blown away. So my parents seeded the vineyard with ladybugs back in the 70s when they first planted their vines. They went and got the ladybug eggs, and so they seeded those out in the fields. And now, decades later, whenever I'm out there pruning the vines, I always find ladybugs almost on every vine.
That's great.
So that's kind of one of my sayings is a ladybug on every vine. That's my goal, and so those things are out there, and they're helping make sure we never have an aphid problem.
Right.
And so I'm big on those things for the reasons that we can look at the sustainability and the healthier aspect of running this farm.
Yeah. Excellent.